Welcome to Dave Talks Ball, the third official episode or fourth official episode, and this September 5th, 2024 episode. We got our live streams here going on TikTok as well, so I appreciate you listeners joining in. If you have any questions, I will look over and get to them as well, but I'm just posting it live. But I know it's Thursday, so we've been trying to do the show Monday, Wednesday, push it back to Thursday. I think it gives more room to breathe. Let some stuff to go. More stuff's coming in, more information. So we're going to do the show, Dave Talks Ball, Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. But so let's go to why you were here. Week 2 is upon us, folks. Week 2 is upon us. We still do not know a lot about these teams, if we're being honest. We know a decent bit about probably 5 teams. But I think week 2 is going to give us some answers to these tests as well. We have 2 early pivotal matchups, starting with the obvious one in Ann Arbor, the Texas-Michigan matchup. Everybody and their grandmas at this matchup. I personally won't be there, but most every big-time network, we are at SECU Unfiltered, everybody will be there. So that'll be a fun matchup. Then we have Sam Pittman and his 2024 Razorback team making the short trip to Stillwater. Well, I'm talking to them over there. They're going to make the short drive to Tulsa, stay the night, then bus over to Stillwater early on Saturday. They needed a much-needed early victory for Sam Pittman, and I kind of have to have it here. We'll discuss Sam Pittman here in just a minute, but we have a conference game as well, folks. We have a conference game on the slate as well. We got South Carolina at Kentucky. Gamecock struggling against the Monarchs of Old Dominion last week. Kentucky played about how many minutes did they play? About 35 minutes the other day of total football out of 60. They played 5 minutes into the 5 minutes into the third quarter, and they called it. So we didn't see Kentucky play a full game, but we do have that slot slated at the midday spot. Massive game for both teams. If South Carolina wants to kind of get into that 7-8 range, like their kind of goal would be, maybe even 6, they got to have it. Kentucky trying to get to 8 and 9, you got to have it. Got to have it. Must win early season SEC game. Mississippi State, they make the trip out west. Much needed non-conference win in year 1 for Jeff Lebby. I have some Mississippi State buddies. Some of them already out there. They were visiting the Grand Canyon today, going golfing tomorrow. That'd be a fun trip. It'll be even better if the Dogs get it done in the former slot of the Pac-12 after dark. The Pac-12 after dark slate, folks, for you people on TikTok. But Jeff Lebby trying to get it. He needs it. You want to go 4-0 in your first year. Auburn, Cal. Cal returned that trip from that ugly game last year out in Berkeley. It was a 14-10 final. I mean, do you remember how embarrassing, how ugly that game was last year? Even Peyton Thorne said it, I think, on the next round with Jim Dunaway and all of them, Ryan Brown. It was an ugly, embarrassing game. But to my point, we'll break down all these matchups. We'll talk in depthly about them and look at the other games across the league. I mentioned the 2 early games, but I'm going to talk about why this game in Ann Arbor is massive for the SEC as an entire league. I mean, you got to think they went 1-3 last week. Granted, it wasn't the top end teams, depending where you had LSU and Texas A&M finishing in the SEC or where you currently have them ranked. But Georgia holding the flag, but it would be a big hit for the SEC if Michigan were to get it done. We'll talk about that preview in a minute. But if Michigan were to get it done, and there's obviously a world where you could get it done, where they obviously get it done. I mean, these are the defending national champs. Texas is coming into the big house. I'm sure Michigan's going to feel a little disrespected. If Michigan were to win that game, I think that would affect the SEC and probably Big Ten come Selection Sunday in the 12-team playoff. Probably difference between getting 4 and 5 teams in potentially, just potentially. That's where it means there's no need to panic on the 1-3 start. But if you were to add the Texas loss in there, that'd be another big one, I think. But we'll also talk about what would a win do in Stillwater for Sam Pittman and the Razorbacks. Who is the bounce back team in week 2 coming off from a loss? Not really like by who they play, but just, hey, who's the team that kind of gets right this week? Who's in the perfect spot? Then it's money-making weekend time. I'll give you my 10 best bets of the weekend. We went 5 and 5, and we almost hit our big money line bet. Big money line bet. Hawaii almost taking down UCLA last week. We reviewed that on Monday, but I'll give you my 10 best bets for money-making weekend. Then we have special guest, Cord Samuels, a.k.a. y'all know him on the streets of Twitter as Ghost of Texas Football. He will be the guest picker, obviously, for obvious reasons, with the Texas-Michigan game. And he's our guest picker for week 2, and he will also help us just discuss the other games as well. But before we get started, guys, we got to thank our buddies over at MYBOOKIE.ag. They are the sponsor of this show. Go to MYBOOKIE.ag and use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit, guys. Go visit our buddies. There's a lot of wages to be made. After I give you the money-making week and we go 10-0 this week, after I give that to you at the end of the show, I would go make an account with our buddies over at MYBOOKIE.ag. And when you do, go use that code SECU at sign up. You're going to receive a special welcome offer. But tell our guys over at MYBOOKIE.ag, your buddies at SECU sent you over. But let's get into the meat and potatoes, folks. It's time. It's week 2. It's Thursday night. You can kind of just start feeling the juice. It feels a little different during the fall when it's football season and Friday morning comes along. It does. Just kind of cooler. It's been a little cooler here in Atlanta. We've gotten that 70-degree weather, but just kind of feels a little different. But what will it feel like in Stillwater? I can tell you what it feel like in Fayetteville if Sam Pittman and the boys don't get one of these first 2 road games, and it starts this weekend in Stillwater. But what does this weekend in Stillwater mean for Sam Pittman? What is this weekend? What would a win in Stillwater for Sam Pittman mean? Massive game for Sammy P and the boys as they make, again, I mentioned the short trip from Tulsa. That's where visiting teams stay. I've done it for when they go to Stillwater. Stay in Tulsa before making the final trip. Stillwater on Saturday morning. Again, too early to say must win. Too early to say must win, but it is definitely a game you would love to get to build some momentum early in the season. Especially when you factor in how big this season is for the future of Sam Pittman. Arkansas needs to collect as many wins as possible early for 2 different reasons. First, depth. Arkansas, like many teams now, but especially these teams that are kind of that middle class, backseat of the plane kind of group out of these 16 teams in the SEC, the depth's just not there across the board. And inevitably, you're going to have depth. Your depth's going to be tested. Every team in the country's depth is tested every week, every season. That affects those middle tier, those back tier teams in the SEC. It just does. They can't have a lot of injuries. But by the time November comes around, they inevitably will have some key pieces banged up or out. You're just never on. But second, I mentioned depth, why this is a big win and why they need this win and why Arkansas needs early season wins. Go look at that November schedule. I highly encourage you. I'll tell you what it is. It's Ole Miss, Texas, Louisiana Tech, Mizzou. Ole Miss, Texas, Louisiana Tech, Mizzou. They get 2 of them at home at Ole Miss and Texas, or 3 of them at home. Ole Miss, Texas, and Louisiana Tech, and finish the season at Mizzou. You can make a case that's the top 3 offenses in the league this year. I'm not going to say that's I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying you could make a case. There's a world where, sorry for you people listening on there, I'm looking over every now and then to the TikTok live as well, but there's a world where those are the top 3 offenses in the conference: Ole Miss, Missouri, and Texas. That's why you got to get those early wins. I've said it all offseason. Arkansas needs to get one of these first 2 road wins, either at Oklahoma State or at Auburn in 2 weeks. If you win this game, I think you get to 6 wins. I feel pretty comfortable. I was on an Arkansas show earlier, and they asked me what I thought this win would be for Sam Pittman. I think it doesn't guarantee you, but you feel really good because you get UAB next week. You should be 3-0, and it makes that Auburn game. I know it's the first conference game. You want to start 1-0, but it doesn't make that Auburn game feel like such a must-win. Then if you were to lose that and lose this one, you would have to go beat A&M or, I mean, that'd be tough. But if you win this game, I think you get to 6 wins, and Sam Pittman's going to have the opportunity to come back for a 6th season if he wants to. If you lose in Stillwater on Saturday, the Auburn game to me in 2 weeks feels like a must-win for 2 reasons. One, you're running out of games to win that you actually can win and have a chance to be favored in. I don't think they'll be favored in it, but depending what happens this week, the line may not be that high. And second, you're building up no momentum if you lose this weekend within your team and program. And that matters more than ever now for multiple reasons. You got to build momentum internally because now with the unlimited transfers, these guys kind of start checking out. I talk to staffs all the time. They're like, yeah, he's not playing this week. I'm like, really? They're like, he could, but probably not. I heard that was an issue with Chris Paul at Arkansas last year, speaking of Arkansas, who's now transferred to Ole Miss. Some of these guys, when there's really nothing to play for anymore, it's kind of what our world is now, a very individualistic society, mercenary society, where I'm looking out for what's best for me, right, wrong, or indifferent. But like that's society, not even just in football, but life in general now. So people start to check out like, hey, I'm going to preserve myself now. I'm saving myself for the portal. I'm going to start reaching out to fillers, whether my high school coach, old handler, a recruiting coach at another school I had a prior relationship with. That matters now. That matters. But Saturday to me, Saturday around brunch when they kick off, noon Eastern, 11 Central. Saturday to me is the first half of the book of this 2024 season for Arkansas that will tell us if Sam Pittman will be the head hog heading in to the 2025 season. So big win, big game for Sammy P and the boys. They're going to have to get it done. They're going to have to get it done, I think, this week. And I should maybe half is not the right word. You really like it. You really like it. It's like Arkansas fans are kind of sitting on G, waiting on O to know if they feel real comfortable in this game. But moving on, hey, there's always time for bounce back, folks. Who is the bounce back team in week 2? Who's a team coming off a loss that bounces back this year? Is it South Carolina against Kentucky? I know A&M plays McNeese State, but they kind of look good. Does Florida look good against Samford? The team that comes to my mind, though, again, I mentioned this isn't because of the opponent or it's a big win. It's LSU. Them hosting the Colonels from Nicholls State. Surprisingly, first meeting ever, and there's 2 teams in the state of Louisiana. I'm not even saying recently. I'm not surprised they didn't play, but ever? It's a little shocking. But I wasn't as down on LSU as some people. I've always thought they were an 8-4, 9-3 team this year. Didn't think they'd lose to USC. But, I mean, you saw some things you like. The defense is better. Naturally, it has to be. They're more aggressive. They're going to live and die with the sword of being aggressive. They're going to try to produce negative plays, turnovers. But they're going to get killed with screens at times and explosive plays as well. But they have personnel issues at all 3 levels there. And I think Blake Baker, Bo Davis, and them guys are going to put together the best defense, here Chinese bandit defense for you at LSU that they possibly can. I think that's what you're going to see. I thought offense, they just kind of need to get rid of the dumb, undisciplined stuff. That goes for defense, too, with Major Burns getting the better. Just LSU across the board needs to lock that in. I think if they can get on the same page, just get our playmakers the football. John Emery, unfortunately, tore his ACL. He's out for the year. Caleb Jackson, we're probably going to start seeing more of him. I thought we'd see more of him Saturday. Maybe Frank Wilson, maybe Joe Sloan, maybe Brian Kelly. Just thought, let's ride the hot hand with John Emery. Right, wrong, or indifferent. But I think LSU bounces back. I think they get a get-right game before they head to Columbia, South Carolina next week for the opener of SEC play when they go to Williams-Brice Stadium. I think they get South Carolina at a good time. South Carolina plays Kentucky this week against a physical Kentucky team, as we all know. I doubt they'll have all the guys ready next week to play LSU that they had this week going into the Kentucky game. So I think they get them right. This is a game to work out some of your wrinkles. Let's don't have dumb penalties. Will Campbell, let's don't have 2 key false starts. LSU's going to handle this game, folks. Don't get me wrong. They're going to handle this game. They're going to win this game. I'm not saying that. But I think they bounce back. This is a get-right week. It's a get-right game for them to go kind of head into conference play. South Carolina, UCLA, South Alabama before kind of their next big one when they host Ole Miss October 12th at Tiger Stadium in a game. I feel like that would be kind of a must-win for LSU and Brian Kelly. But I think they bounce back right. I think they look good. I don't think there's a line on this game, but overall, I think LSU does cover this or does play well, and I think they get right headed into conference play next week. Speaking of, it's time for some predictions, folks. It's time for some predictions, some previews of the big matchups across the board. Let's start up with it. The big one, folks. We're going to go in chronological order of time. Texas at Michigan, 12 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Big noon kickoff. It's going to be Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt and the boys. Texas currently a 7.5-point favorite. The point total is 42.5 right now. What do we think? I think the defending national champions are hosting Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. Michigan coming off a win against Fresno State where they left a little bit to be desired offensively. And Texas is coming off a win at home versus Colorado State. First big game for Sherrone Moore and the boys. Remember, Jim Harbaugh is in L.A., now the head coach for the Chargers. I know you know that, but I'm just stating it out there for the first-time listeners. Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns. Similar game last year, similar matchup. Probably even more big time. They went into Tuscaloosa last year, and it springboarded them. They got the win. It springboarded them to a Big 12 title and a college football playoff appearance. This game we looked ahead to when we started to look at the 2024 schedule. This is that game where you're like, yep, that's the big game of the non-conference slate. That one right there, Texas at Michigan. That was it. And now it's here. We're less than 48 hours away. Now, is this a must-win for either team? No, absolutely not. But with college football, let me ask you this. Would college football be ready for a Michigan win? I feel like I see nobody predicting that. Myself, well, you're about to find out, but myself included, most likely. Nobody's really, I haven't seen anybody predict this. I've seen some people kind of like them in the money line if they had to do it, but here it is. I just set the tone for you. What is going to happen? Everyone talks, hear me out, everyone talks about the Michigan front with guys like Kenneth Grant and Mason Smith. I think Kenneth Grant's going to be a monster. I think he's going to be one of the better defensive linemen in the league when he gets drafted. But everybody's talking about that Michigan defensive front with Grant and Smith. Or sorry, Mason Graham. Mason. Sorry, I was thinking Mason Smith. LSU's defense. Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant versus the Texas offensive line with guys like Kelvin Banks, DJ Campbell, Hayden Connor, Jake Majors at center. Well, and that's a heavyweight fight right there, and we're going to see some of it. That's a heavyweight fight right there. That's a lot of future NFL guys. That's a lot of future NFL guys. Mason Graham and my guy Kenneth Grant for sure. For sure, absolutely. Then obviously Kelvin Banks, DJ Campbell, Hayden Connor, Jake Majors. That's a lot of NFL guys. 6 guys I just named. 2 things are going to determine this football game, though. How well will Michigan play in space, and how will Texas hold up against the Michigan rushing attack, in my opinion? First, in regard to the spatial game, Sark isn't just going to run into the teeth of this defense going back to that interior. He's not dumb enough to just go, I think, run into the teeth of Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. I think he will have to at times, but I just don't think he's going to do that. I don't think that's going to be the strategy. I think he's going to try to get Silas Bolden, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, maybe even the big-time freshman Ryan Wingo if he's ready for the big time in the big house in space. They're going to think they can out-athlete Michigan on the edges, which I think is the right game plan. And again, I think Texas' offensive line is awesome. Maybe they do go take it to them. Maybe they go slap Michigan in the face up front in their house at their style of play. Now, for the second point, I personally don't think Texas hangs their hat on that running in between the tackles. I think they can have more success on the edges in space, out-athleting Texas. Outside of Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, is going to have probably his best game of his life, I think. Because I'll be interested, does he travel with Silas Bolden or Isaiah Bond? Because, again, you don't really know who Texas's true number 1 receiver is, and they probably don't even know it. But, again, I think Texas, in my first point, thinks they're going to out-athlete them. That would be my strategy. That would be my strategy. Sark's one of the best play callers in the sport. I think you see something like that. Now, for Texas, on the other side of this, you lost 2 top 55 draft picks on the interior defensive line in Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat. How do the next guys up, like Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins, Bill Norton transferring over from Arizona, had a pretty good game last week. He previously signed with Georgia. How do they hold up against a physical Michigan offensive line that struggled a little bit last week, but they are physical, and you're coming into their house? You do that. If you stop this run, if you stop Michigan's run game, whether it be quarterback with Warren or Orgy or Donovan Edwards at the running back spot, if you can stop their run game, which is their bread and butter, they're kind of like a boa constrictor, Michigan is. They want to just play a close game, and you think you can go, another boxing analogy, 12 rounds with them, and by about the 8th round to the end of the 3rd quarter, you tap out. You're in Rocky IV mode. Apollo Creed's trainer just throwing in the towel, yelling at Rocky, telling him to throw in the towel. That's what Michigan wants to do. They're a boa constrictor. They want to constrict you to death and see if you can go all 4 quarters. If Texas can stop this run, if guys like Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Bill Norton have a big game, Michigan is going to have to try to win in the passing game, which I do not think is a path to victory for them. I have a hard time ever saying it's not a good path to victory for some teams, especially good teams like Michigan, but it's not. You do that, and I don't think Michigan has the weapons on the outside to beat Texas. These 2 things are going to determine the factor of this game. How well Michigan defends Texas in space, are they making open field tackles? I think that's going to be key because, again, it's going to be a heavyweight battle with the Texas offensive line versus the Michigan interior defense run, but I don't think Sark's going to go run into that. He will at times, but I don't think he's going to try to make a living. And then finally, can Texas stop Michigan's run game with your 2 deep from last year, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, and obviously bringing in Bill Norton because you lost 2 top 55 draft picks. It's tough to replace. If they do that, Texas may win big. They may win big. But I think those are the 2 keys heading into this matchup. And again, everybody's picking Texas to come into the big house and win pretty easily. I think Michigan's going to start off with a chip on their shoulder. It wouldn't be a bad bet to maybe take Michigan in the first half of the first quarter. Because that doesn't sit well with Michigan. Hey, we're the defending national champs. We got a lot of people back on defense, especially our front seven. Like, who the hell are they talking about? They're going to come into our house and win. I don't give a crap if they went to Tuscaloosa and won last year. We're the national champs. If I'm Michigan, I'm sitting there thinking that. If I'm Mason Graham, I'm thinking that. Well, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham think that? That does not sit well. But, however, emotions ultimately wear off, usually about the first quarter in my history. It usually wears off when we just start playing football. But with that being said, I just think the athleticism and Michigan's inability to make some plays one-on-one in space will be the difference, probably on both sides of the ball. I don't see Michigan offensively having many threats that scare a questionable Texas secondary. I see Texas having a lot of success in space ultimately because Will Johnson can't cover everybody. And I think Texas does a decent job stopping the Michigan run because they didn't get as much push as I'd like to against Fresno State last week in Michigan. They're going to try to be physical. They're going to come out with some emotion, trying to punch Texas in the mouth, and they may early, but I think Texas ultimately settles in. I do think, I think Michigan's going to have some success on the ground. I do, but I think Texas's defense makes some second half adjustments. Offense as well. I think offense separates come the fourth quarter. Give me Texas. 28-17. They cover. They cover. Barely, but they cover. Give me Texas 28-17. I like the Horns. I think it's be closer than people think. I think I think this game's going to be much closer than people think. Moving on to our next game. Again, the Horns getting the W in Ann Arbor. Arkansas at Oklahoma State, 12 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Oklahoma State, 7.5-point favorites right now. The point total, 62.5, setting the tone for you. We discussed earlier, what would this game mean for Sam Pittman? How important of a game is this for Sam Pittman and the Razorbacks? Is it a must-win? Probably not. But Arkansas needs to get as many wins early as possible because November could be brutal. I mentioned it. Ole Miss, Texas, and Missouri, three of the arguably the best offenses in the league. It could be. And Arkansas is as healthy as they will be all year right now heading into this game. In Oklahoma State, I haven't really gone back and looked, but it just always feels like they stubbed their toe a little bit out of the game. Last year, they got rocked at home by South Alabama by 30. I saw the guy at South Alabama, forget his name, it's at Arkansas now, giving some bulletin board material. I don't understand that, but he was giving some bulletin board material across the board there, which it's just kind of dumb. I feel like he said he knew their formations. Come on. But very important game across the board in regard to Arkansas's postseason chances. However, they are facing a Cowboy team that is coming off a Big 12 title game of performance and has a ton of production and experience coming back. The offensive line, one of the best in the country as a unit. That you see any kind of rankings, they're always in it. It's more just at a unison. They got 4 starters back in the offensive line. This could be a challenge for Arkansas's defensive coordinator, Travis Williams, in the Arkansas day. We obviously all know about Ollie Gordon, reigning Doak Walker Award winner. I think Arkansas is going to sell out the run. But this is also a wide receiver group that is solid for the Cowboys across the board. It's a solid group from top to bottom. Rashad Owens, Deshaun Stribling, Brennan Presley, Talon Chatron, really Rashad Owens, number 10. Go watch the film. He makes a lot of plays one-on-one deep. He does. So I think defensively, I'm banking on Arkansas selling out at least early. Okay, your best player, Ollie Gordon, is not going to beat us. I'm going to try to make you beat us with one hand tied behind your back. That's if I'm Arkansas, that's what I am trying to do there. That is 100% what I'm trying to do. Because I'm going to be like, hey, can you guys beat me? Can you guys beat me throwing the football? Can guys like Alan Bowman beat me throwing the football? That is what I would ask. Then on the other side, Bobby Petrino in the Arkansas offense in his first big game as the Arkansas OC. Taylon Green needs to play turnover-free football. New quarterback coming from Boise State. Looked really good last week. Arkansas went 10 for 10 on scoring opportunities last week, scoring touchdowns on all 10 opportunities. I think both offenses are going to have success, but limiting explosive plays is going to be key. So what's going to happen? This is one of those games where simple mistakes that we don't even talk about in previews is the difference. Like a special teams mistake, a procedural penalty, using a timeout too early in the half, and you need it late in the game. That's going to make the difference in this one. I think this game's going to be back and forth. I expect this to just maybe – it's 62.5 right there. If you gave me 63, I'd probably take the under, but at 62.5, I could see this game going over. But this game to me is going to come down to Arkansas tackling in space. I said that on the Arkansas show I was on. you can even throw Oklahoma State in this conversation to me from a tackling in space standpoint. But I think Ollie Gordon going to be key. Like I mentioned, Arkansas is going to sell out to stop that. If you go back and watch Oklahoma State, I encourage you to. They like for Alan Bowman. He doesn't really strike fear in many people's eyes or anything like that. Or he doesn't. He kind of just is a distributor, kind of like a point guard. He's just distributing the rock out there. They want him to distribute to his playmakers, guys like I just talked about. I mentioned a couple of them earlier. But a lot of quick throws, string game. Now, when they do stretch the field, those guys do win. They win their fair shares of one-on-ones. I mean, there's no questioning that. I mean, like I said, Rashad Owens, I feel like I saw him when I went back and watched the games. They consistently win their one-on-one matchups. But can Arkansas make the necessary tackles? Because I think when you load the box, Oklahoma State's going to make, okay, we'll just throw it out. Simple throws. We're not going to turn this ball over. Let's see if they can tackle. What Arkansas has to do is limit these screens to just 2 to 3 yards, maybe even 4. They can't turn into 15 to 20 to 25 games because you're missed tackles. The secondary are going to have to get off blocks. Block destruction is going to be key. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch Georgia on their block destruction on the edges. That's going to be key. I know this is random and people are like tackling in space in the secondary. Yeah, it's not going to be about Ollie Gordon because he's going to pull Bill Belichick if T. Will's smart. And he's a smart defensive coordinator. I'm going to take your best weapon away. Your best weapon should not beat me if I'm a defensive coordinator or I just am a bad coordinator. Let's call a spade a spade. But I think if Oklahoma State gets a lot of yards after the catch, Arkansas is not going to have a chance in this game because then they're going to move people out of the box, and that's when Ollie Gordon could get going. This is the game to me, folks. This is the key. But I think Taylon Green and Bobby Petrino in the second half are the difference. Don't feel great about it, but give me Arkansas 34-27. Just, again, don't feel great. Arkansas is getting 7.5 at T. Boone Pickens Stadium. Just to feel Arkansas wins this one because it's early in the year. They're as healthy as they can. I think T. Will's going to have a good game plan. I think Bobby Petrino, Taylon Green in the second half are the talk of the afternoon. Give me the Hawks by 7. Big win. Would be one of Sam Pittman's bigger wins of his tenure. You feel really good about Arkansas's postseason chances if they can leave Stillwater with a dub. I think they do. Don't feel confident in it, but I think they can. Arkansas, man. That'd be a big win. Big win. Next, it's kind of the primetime spot, former CBS spot, but South Carolina. It's a conference game, folks. Our only conference game of the week. South Carolina at Kentucky, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone on ABC. Kentucky favored by 10. The point total at 42.5, setting the tone for you. A must win, I think, for each team if they want to reach their respective goals. Now, for South Carolina, it's probably 6 to 7 wins, just getting to that postseason for Shane Beamer and the boys heading into his 4th year. Kentucky, I think Stoops and them were thinking 8-9. Both teams need it. South Carolina has won 2 in a row in this series, and there's no love lost between Shane Beamer and Mark Stoops. These guys don't like each other. They don't. From going back to Mark Stoops mocking Shane Beamer with his sunglasses at SEC Media Days, Shane Beamer put the sunglasses on and dancing to Turn My Swag On after they beat Kentucky both years. There's just not a lot of love lost here. You best believe Mark Stoops and the Kentucky Wildcats are going to want to get revenge off the past 2 years. You know it's going to be personal for Shane Beamer in South Carolina. But South Carolina coming into this game off a 23-19 win over Old Dominion. Kentucky coming in after not even playing a full game. They played about 35 minutes. Game for Southern Miss got suspended 2 or 3 times, I think, and they just called it after 5. But they were winning. They ended up calling it 31-0. Both teams have new quarterbacks that are just major question marks that we just don't really know about. Good, bad, or indifferent. Brock Vandagriff and Lenoris Sellers. That's who we're talking about. Brock Vandagriff, the Georgia transfer, backup quarterback for Georgia, and Lenoris Sellers. Didn't really see a lot of him last week. Again, they only played 35 minutes. Lenoris Sellers, more comfortable in between the tackles, running the field. He doesn't scare me with his arm, and he also doesn't have a lot of help on the outside. I mean, Joshua Simon, the tight end, is going to be key for him, I think, in this game and for the season, really. But what is going to happen? Can South Carolina generate a run game on the perimeter? I don't think the interior run game is going to be there against the Kentucky front with Deion Walker and the boys. I think he's the best interior defensive lineman when he's playing with a high motor on a consistent basis. Now, it wasn't a complete game, but Southern Miss only ran for 5 yards last week. That just kind of shows you that you're not really going to get a lot against Kentucky between the middle. Adding Jamon Dumas-Johnson and then the leading tackler, De'Aaron Jackson from last year as well is still there. But I think Dow Loggins and Shane Beamer aren't that naive to try and go run right into the teeth of that defense as well. The only problem here, let me bring it up. Sorry, I meant to pull this up. Come on, let's get the graphic on, producer. Let's get the graphic on. You see it. Sorry about that. The only problem, though, is the tight ends and the receivers weren't great in perimeter blocking last week against Old Dominion. They were getting blown up pretty regularly and losing leverage. Outside of the obvious turnovers and penalties, this is where the game's going to be run. Can South Carolina get anything going on the perimeter? The receivers, tight ends, offensive tackles are going to have to help. But if you're a South Carolina fan, I'm not just trying to paint a negative picture. A lot of people are kind of down on South Carolina after the performance against Old Dominion a little bit. I honestly think the 10 points are a little high. But if you're South Carolina, there's some optimism. The defensive line has an edge. I mean, they do. I mean, Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard, the Georgia Tech transfer. I mean, in Kentucky's offensive line, the former Big Blue Wall, still a big question mark. Again, we didn't see them for a complete game last week against Southern Miss due to the delay. So I think there's still some question marks, and guys like Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart have the ability to be impact players up front to go along with some other solid guys on the interior. TJ Sanders, Boogie Huntley, TJ Sanders, all those guys. They could cause problems for Kentucky and keep South Carolina in this game late. If South Carolina in the front seven show up, they can give South Carolina a chance to go steal this one late on the road and make it 3 years in a row and kind of make people forget about last week. Because they'd be 2-0 and LSU coming to town next week to your home at the crib. Now, I don't think this game's a blowout, but I do think Kentucky ends up winning this game something like 24-13. I just trust the Kentucky offense more across the board to get something going. Both defenses will keep this game from getting away from anyone, but I trust Kentucky to generate enough explosive plays or two. And the Cats start out 2-0, 1-0, and they do play a full game here. I don't think the weather is going to be an issue. I think 10's a little high because I think this South Carolina's going to come out fired up. Again, they're kind of like Arkansas. Depth could be an issue, but I think this is the best South Carolina team you're going to get. I mean, they've heard the noise. They listen to it. People are down on them. They're going to come give it their best effort, at least in the first quarter. They're going to have an edge coming into this game. They think they can beat Kentucky. They think they own Kentucky. They've won 2 in a row. And from a Kentucky standpoint, it's the best chance to get South Carolina. South Carolina's been getting you in November. And usually Kentucky, like I mentioned, the mid to back tier teams on this plane in the SEC, by the time November comes around, depth's killing them. They got a lot of guys banged out, a lot of guys out. South Carolina's been getting Kentucky when they've had a lot of guys out. That's not the case this year. It's obviously week 2. I think Kentucky takes advantage of that. Mark Stoops and the Big Blue Nation in that streak. The Kentucky Wildcats in the 2-game losing streak to Shane Beamer in South Carolina. I think something like 24-13. The under in this game would be something I would like to hit. I think the under in this game would be something I'd like to hit. In the comments before we move to the next game, Hall of Fame college football, Archie beats fraudulent, Okie light, book it. Yeah, I picked it. I don't feel great about it though, Hall of Famer. I don't. I don't feel great about it at all. I got a Christian here, just being a hater. 5 viewers, clowns, y'all don't know ball. God, is that not a terrible statement? 5 viewers must have been right when we got on the show. But clowns don't. I hate the don't know ball or ball knower thing. Most of the people who say they don't or they do know ball don't know ball. If you're having to brag about it and your work doesn't speak for yourself, you probably aren't a ball knower. Let's just call a spade there. Quarterback Spotlight, appreciate you listening, brother. Says good stuff. Moving on. Before we get our next guest in here, we got 2 more games to preview. We got the Big 5. Then I'll briefly talk about the rest of the SEC schedule. But going to the nightcap, the big one, Tennessee versus NC State, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone on ABC in Charlotte, North Carolina, Bank of America Stadium. Tennessee -10 right now. Is it set? I got it at 7.5 actually. We'll talk about that a little bit later on Money Making Weekend. But the point total 61.5, setting the tone for you folks. First, we need to just get rid of neutral site games. Let's get it back to campus, baby. If it's up to me, the whole college football playoffs until the national championship will be on the campus. I get why, though, the Bowl Tide don't want to give that up because it's about money, folks. It's about money. Most things in life are. But conversation for another day, moving to away from neutral sites game. But, hey, we get this matchup, so let's just be fired up. Good matchup nonetheless. But Josh Heupel could be bringing in his best Tennessee team yet into Bank of America Stadium. We know about Nico Iamaleava. We know about it. Real deal. Go watch the highlights. Go watch the game from the UT Chattanooga game. I know it was UT Chattanooga. The ball placement, the athleticism, he would have completed those passes against Alabama and Georgia. I'm just telling you, folks. I'm just telling you. I'm again, Dave Shumate, your host, longtime recruiting director of player personnel in the SEC. I humbly say I know what it's supposed to look like. And again, like I said, I know it was UT Chattanooga, but things he was doing was being consistently great at the small things. And if anyone knows how big of a struggle that is for some people, Tennessee fans know with Joe Milton. Like I said, go back and look at the mesh points, the reads, the accuracy on the throws, his ability to read the RPO at the mesh point, pull it last minute. That's the little things you can't take for granted that I think ball fans did a little bit after watching Joe Milton just have a decent game against Clemson in an Orange Bowl and thought it would bleed over. Joe Milton didn't do the little things right consistently. That's what makes the great ones the great ones. Go ask Tom Brady. But Dave Doran, head coach of the Wolfpack, they come in after a not so pretty performance against Western Carolina last week. They ultimately dominated the fourth quarter. They won 38-21. They put away in the fourth, but it was tight for around 3 quarters. However, I fully expect Tennessee to get NC State's best shot. They're going to obviously play better. Again, they're not going to play as bad as they did, just like South Carolina's not going to play as bad as they did against Old Dominion, against Kentucky. It's a new week. We're talking about 18 to 22-year-old kids, guys. But with that being said, how does NC State and the Wolfpack, Grayson McCall, how do they generate enough offense to keep up with Tennessee? I think McCall's going to have the best game of his life to win this game. I've said 2 best games of someone's life tonight. I said Grayson McCall is going to have it on Saturday night. Will Johnson's going to have it on Saturday afternoon when they play Texas. But speaking of Grayson McCall, he has some weapons. The Kevin Concepcion kid and Justin Jolly at tight end. He has some weapons. I just don't trust him to consistently make those throws. Some may ask, how good is Tennessee's secondary? It's improved, but we'll find out how improved this week. Not ultimately, because again, I'm not sold Grayson McCall can really stretch the field and honestly scare Tennessee's defense. I just don't think McCall can be consistent enough in the passing game. I just don't. How does NC State, on the other side of this, though, how does DC, Tony Gibson, and NC State defend the Tennessee offense? I mean, 3-man fronts are not, I shouldn't say Tennessee's kryptonite, but that's something they don't want to face, the guys from the Josh Heupel tree. They don't. Alex Golesh, the head coach at South Florida, we'll talk about them in a little bit. He's a Tennessee guy. Josh Heupel, those guys don't like to see that stuff. Who else am I missing here? Jeff Levy. They don't like to see that stuff. The 3-man fronts will give Tennessee issues at times in the RPO game. But after the first 2 drives, I think Tony Gibson, the defense coordinator for NC State, is going to have some good stuff that first drive or 2. But after the first drives, we get into the meat potatoes of the game. Can NC State consistently throw different looks at Nico and confuse him in his first big start? Remember that while you're watching this game. But here's what's going to happen. I'm about to tell you. For NC State to have a chance, they're going to have to run the football and control the clock. I don't see them keeping up in a score fest. I think most people would agree with that. Again, I don't trust Grayson McCall in the passing game to win this one through the air. I just don't. I don't think that's that crazy of a statement. Also, they run the football. They can keep Nico and Tennessee away from the field. They keep them on the sideline. Tennessee, I think, it's the best defensive front they've had in years since Philip Fulmer was there. Probably they got James Pierce, Joshua Joseph, Big O, Amari Thomas. Tennessee's got guys up front. Arian Carter, Keenan Peely, BYU transfer from last year. He got hurt last year, hurt Tennessee at the linebacker spot. But NC State may have to have some creative stuff early in the run game. But what happens when you get down? Let's just say Tennessee gets up 10 to 14 points and you're playing catch-up. That's right where Tennessee will want Grayson McCall and them. I think they get them there. The Pack are going to have most likely the lead and control this game from the jump if this were to happen. I just don't see it happening. This is also a game that I could see spiral out of control for NC State real fast if they get behind early and McCall is forced to throw more than they want. I think that is more likely to happen. Here's a bold prediction, folks. I think Tennessee wins this one and they win it big. I think they make a statement. I think it's going to be something like 42-14. That's how confident I am in this one. I think it's going to be something like 42-14. I think this game's like 42-14. I think it's going to be a big blowout. Like, I don't know why. I just feel that. I think Tennessee comes ready to play in this game. I think NC State's just not going to be able to keep up. That's how I kind of feel about this one, if I'm being honest. Just feel. I love this one. I love Tennessee to cover this one, get a big win in Charlotte, essentially paint the town orange. And then finally, out of our big games to cover, Mississippi State at Arizona State. 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone on ESPN. Arizona State favored by 6. I think I've seen it down to 5 now, but the point total 60.5. Setting the tone. Second game of his first tenure for Jeff Lebby and second game of his second tenure for Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham. Arizona State, pretty impressive last week. I actually bet against them. I took Wyoming in plus 7.5. They got after Wyoming, 48-7, pretty quick too. I think they had a pick 6 right out of the gate when I was watching the highlights of that. But the most impressive thing in week 1 was the run game. You got Cam Scatteraboo, DeCarlos Brooks, and the quarterback Sam Levitt, who's the Michigan State transfer. They all got involved in the run game against a solid Wyoming team. But for Mississippi State, they looked great also offensively. They did in week 1 against, I know it was Eastern Kentucky, but Jeff Levy couldn't have asked for a better first game, and he also could not ask for a better first-year quarterback for his system in Blake Shapen. He really couldn't. This is a big game for both teams here if they're both trying to get to postseason, and that should be the ultimate goal. I said it throughout the entire summer in regard to what would be an acceptable first year for Jeff Levy. And I never want to say a 5-7 record is a good season because it's a losing record. It is what it is. This is a scoreboard business. But if Jeff Levy could win his 4 non-cons, he's already got one, Eastern Kentucky. They get Arizona State this week. I think they play Toledo, maybe Ball State, another MAC team. If they could get those 4 non-cons, steal a conference game against maybe Arkansas at home, maybe A&M if they can't get it going offensively, just steal a conference game. They could get to 5 win, be competitive in some games. It's a solid first year. Let's go get in the portal. Let's figure it out at that point. I think it's a solid first year. I mean, really early in the season, though. Tough to say what we're going to see late Saturday night in Tempe. I mean, it is. This is replacing the Pac-12 after dark, 10:30 Eastern kickoff. I think anyone who tells you what's going to happen doesn't really know. It's just a guess. But let me tell you what I think is going to happen. This game and the game in Stillwater could go numerous ways to me. I'm talking about the Oklahoma State and Arkansas game. And I would not be surprised either way. But the key to this game to me is, can Mississippi State stop the Arizona State run game? I mentioned the Scatteraboo. I mentioned Brooks. I mentioned Levitt, the quarterback, the Michigan State transfer, being involved in the run game. And it scares me a little bit if I'm a Mississippi State person. This could arguably be Mississippi State's worst defensive line they've had in over a decade. And that's more of a compliment to the program. I mean, it is. Look at all the guys in the NFL across the board there. Fletcher Cox, Jeffrey Simmons, Montez Sweat, Chris Jones. It's more of a compliment. They just don't really have many dudes outside of Russell. It's really it, especially in the interior. I think Kenny Dillingham goes back to that well. He's going to use his quarterback and Scatteraboo in the run game. I think he's going to want to try to test new defense coordinator Coleman Hutzler and this Mississippi State defense and just say, hey, can they stop the run? If not, we're going to live on this and keep their offense, guys like Blake Shapen, off the field. Like I mentioned, Sun Devil quarterback Sam Levitt, he's a threat in the run game as well. On the other side, though, I do think State will get theirs offensively through the air, but the run game needs to be more consistent on both sides for Mississippi State. They had over 200 yards rushing last week, but 40 of that came on a Creed Whittemore run. The running back room is another thin room for Mississippi State right now. I mean, you saw former Bulldog Woody Marks playing for USC on Sunday night. None of State's running backs in the game against Eastern Kentucky had more than 40 yards rushing. It's a thin room, and it was going into the year. I mean, both the defensive line and running backs room I mentioned that I have concerns about were issues going into the year. But I think keys to this game, be aggressive through the air and try to generate as many explosive plays with Blake Shapen as possible. Number 2, you have to be able to generate some kind of run game to help alleviate Shapen. It just can't be him all night. You got to be aggressive, be explosive, but there's got to be some kind of run game there. And then finally, limit turnovers. Arizona State made a living off that last week. I think they had 3 or 4. Again, within the first 30 seconds of the game, they had a pick 6 against Wyoming. And Mississippi State, you go back and watch that game, they put the ball on the ground a few times in that game last week against Eastern Kentucky. They were just fortunate they got it back. If that's not the case this week, they're going to lose the game. They'll be flying back, getting into Starkville very late Sunday morning with a loss if they start turning the football over. But even if Arizona State is able to run some, and I'm sure they'll be able to, if you do those 3 things, State's going to have a good chance to leave Tempe with a much-needed non-conference win. And again, I think they need all 4 of them. Give me Mississippi State some way, somehow. That line's lowering, though. I said 6. I think it's at 5.5 now. Yeah, I have it on. Yeah, producer got it up, 5.5. Give me Mississippi State 35-34. Real barn burner to top off the night, the former Pac-12 after dark slot. Again, I think the Mississippi State, Arizona State game, Arkansas, Oklahoma State game wouldn't shock me either way. I'd be really surprised if NC State beat Tennessee. I'd be pretty surprised if Michigan beat Texas as well, and I'd be pretty shocked if South Carolina beat Kentucky. But the other 2, Mississippi State, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, I think it's a complete toss-up. But before we get our guy Ghost of Texas football on, let's just look at the rest of the schedule real fast, checking the chat. Oh, he's back. On is the gray, baby. He's back. Jeff Levy is a good coach. Jeff Levy's a good coach, but he can't be as conservative as a head coach as he was at OC at Oklahoma. I agree. Got to be aggressive through the air. We got to establish some kind of run game. We got to help shaping out. They're lucky to have him, man. You couldn't ask for a better first-year quarterback. But let's go around the rest of the league real fast before we get our guy on here as a special guest picker. Just quickly, McNeese State at Texas A&M, 11:45 on the SEC Network, no line. It's a get-right game for Texas A&M before they head to the Swamp next week. They need that one. That'll be a big game for both Florida and Texas A&M. You got to work out the offense. The center's out. Martin Naboo's out for the year. The Utah transfer center's got to come in. How is that relationship going to be? Can we see any compromise in Colin Klein's priorities offensively and the strengths of Connor Weigman? Let's let that factor in. Tennessee Tech at Georgia, 1 p.m. on ESPN Plus, SEC Network Plus. No line for that. Georgia's getting right before they host Kentucky. Cal at Auburn, 2:30 on ESPN2 at Jordan-Hare. Auburn favored by 13, point total 53.5. Remember, this one was a 14-10 ugly game in Berkeley last year. I think Auburn's better. If they are better, they should. I hate to use the word handle Cal here, but they should win this game. A guy to watch for Cal, we know if you follow college football, Jaden Ott, the running back for Cal, very good player. Left banged up a little bit last week. He's probable for this game. I expect him to play. Mendoza, the quarterback for Cal, pretty good player. They'll play two different quarterbacks. I think the line of scrimmage, Auburn's going to have a massive advantage. I expect Jalen McLeod, Keldrick Faulk, two edges for Auburn to have a big day. I think this is a DJ Durkin game, one of the more underrated defensive coordinators in the country. Was at A&M the last 2 years. I think he schemes up well. I also think Auburn. Expect a big day out of Jarquez Hunter, one of the more underrated players in the league. I don't know why he is, but he is. But I like Auburn across the board on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I actually like Auburn to cover this as well. So give me Auburn there. Middle Tennessee State at Ole Miss, 3:15 Central Standard Time Zone on the SEC Network. Ole Miss favored by 43. Middle Tennessee escaped with a win against somebody last week. I forget what it was. This is preseason game number 2 for Ole Miss. Middle's not bad, but again, I'd expect Ole Miss to play a decent amount of guys in this one. Again, 43, too rich for my blood. Ole Miss wins, though. South Florida at Alabama, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. Bama favored by 31. Point total, 63.5. Remember, this was that ugly game last year. You didn't see Jalen Milroe play. You didn't see a lot of guys play. Bama squeaked it out. Probably one of the more uglier games of the Nick Saban era. 31 may be a little too rich, but I think Jalen Milroe has a big day. This will be a good test for Bama. This will be a good test. This will be a good test for Bama across the board because they're going to get – this is Alex Golesh. He's a Josh Heupel guy. They run the same system. Bama will see this in a couple of weeks when they play Tennessee. Kane Womack, the DC for Alabama. It'll be a good warm-up, good appetizer. And also, if you're interested in the transfer portal, Byron Brown, the quarterback from South Florida, I would not be shocked at all if he is a big portal name next year from a quarterback perspective. Guys, teams like Auburn and stuff going after him. Watch him as well. Bama wins. Not ready to say they cover, but I think Bama wins. If you made me pick if they're going to cover or not, I would say they cover. Buffalo at Missouri. Missouri favored by 34.5. Point total 51.5. Buffalo, new head coach Pete Limbo, former South Carolina special teams guy. They will be coached really well. Remember, Buffalo's head coach Mo Linquist is now Alabama's corners coach. Missouri handles business here. Again, 6 o'clock on ESPN+. Sanford at Florida, 6 p.m. DJ Lagway getting the start. I think that's Billy Napier's live for AF right now. He needs to get that going again. I mentioned A&M Florida next week. Big game for both teams. Florida just needs to look like they're improving somewhat offensively, get the dumb penalties out. I mentioned Nichols at LSU, 6:30 on ESPN+, no line as well. I think LSU's the team that bounces back. I think they clean up some stuff. I think it was all fixable. I didn't feel a different way about LSU either way. Again, I think they're 8-4, 9-3, like I said, going into the season. Still feel that way. They just need to shake out some stuff, get rid of the dumb penalties. Let's get the ball to your playmakers. Let's go get ready for our conference opener next week in Columbia, South Carolina against South Carolina. Alcorn State at Vanderbilt. The Doors 1-0. Should be 2-0 after this one. 6:30 on ESPNU. I like the Doors big in this one. Maybe come out a little slower. How they handle probably the biggest win in the Clark Lee era last week against Virginia Tech. But look out for our guy, quarterback from New Mexico State, baby. Taking over Diego Pavia. Watch out for him, guys. I'm telling you, our guy, Cole Thompson, on our Sunday morning reaction show, he's claiming he's repping a Diego Pavia jersey. We'll see if he does it, but I think Vanderbilt gets to 2-0. Houston at Oklahoma, 6:45 on the SEC Network. Oklahoma favored by 28. I think they cover that. Houston's terrible. UNLV beat the you-know-what out of them. on Saturday. This is a bounce back game for Oklahoma. They should try to improve the 1 for 12 on third down. Again, got to start ironing those kinks out before Tennessee comes to town in a couple of weeks. I think they will, though. But that's the wrap around the SEC from a preview standpoint. Hannes the Gray said, working from 7 p.m. to 11 a.m., brother. Lost track of time. No doubt, brother. Appreciate you listening. But it is time now to bring on our guy. Let me get him in here. There he is. Our guy, Cord Samuels, a.k.a. you know him on the mean streets of Twitter or X, whatever the hell you call it. Ghost of Texas football. You can go give him the follow at 40 Acre Vibes. Cord, what's going on, brother?
Hey, man. What an introduction. I blown away a little bit. I appreciate that. Definitely give me a follow, guys. Love talking all college football. Most importantly, Dave, I appreciate the invitation on to Dave Talks Ball, man. This is awesome. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Hey, your boy Mars Jam welcoming you in right off the bat.
There we go.
Texas guy. He sends in Boomer. Also said great show. Appreciate you, Mars, listening in, brother. But let's get to it. We obviously got the big one, the big noon kickoff. We're going to see our guys, Gus Johnson and the boys, Joe Klatt and the boys, the big noon kickoff. What's kind of the vibe out there? Do you feel like many Texas fans are concerned, or Texas people around Texas in general are concerned about actually losing this game?
I mean, honestly, not as many people as I wish were concerned with losing this game. I just feel like there's a lot of positive juju right now. Everybody feels really, really good about the matchup. I think a little more of that has to do with the fact that Michigan looked the way that they did on Saturday night. I don't think Texas fans were overly impressed by what they saw. So, yeah, I say as a whole, I mean, there'd be a lot of people to be really surprised to see Texas lose. I'm not exactly all the way there. I think that it's going to be a dogfight. I really do. And there are plenty of avenues that could lead to a Michigan win. So high vibes around the campus. I mean, but it's got a ball game to play.
What's kind of the key to the game? What's the matchup you think we're – again, I don't think Sark goes and just runs right into the teeth of the defense. I don't. With Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, I don't think he really does it. And again, maybe I think Texas's offensive line's capable of potentially doing something like that. But I just don't see that. Where do you think Texas is going to go attack and maybe see they have an advantage? I think it's out in space on the edges.
Absolutely. And, talking to a couple of people inside the program that, that said that our best concepts would be, outside zone, wide zone related. Those would be what we block the best. You saw a lot of that with the Colorado State game. You didn't see a lot of the inside zone and the duo concepts that Sarkisian and Kyle Flood really like to run. And part of me is like, okay, Michigan obviously knows that we have that on tape. It's not like they just watched the Colorado State game. They've watched years past. And so they know that we're going to have that, but I think that we work those in particular because that's going to be where our advantage is as far as hitting those guys. This is the fastest Texas team that I've ever seen. Offense, defense, everything combined. It's the fastest Texas team. And so getting your guys just in a little bit of space is going to be huge for Sark. Go back to the 2022 Bama game. We didn't run right into the teeth of that defense. Sark came up with screens, quick hitters, ways to get Jatavian Sanders, Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson kind of out on the edge. And I think he'll attempt to do a lot of that. And he's so dang creative in how he does it. At times I'm like, at some point, when do people figure it out? But he can hit you in so many different ways, so many different screens to so many different players. I feel comfortable about him getting the ball in space. So I definitely agree with you there. The edges, getting the ball to your playmakers in space, which is, that's ABC standard coach speak, right?
Yeah.
But I feel great about the athletes that we have. That's going to be huge. Now, as far as maybe what a key is, I'm really curious to see how we convert inside the red zone. I don't think moving the ball between the 20s and the 30s will, be that big of an issue for Texas. Sarkisian's great. Quinn is great. Plus or above average offensive line. How do we score in the red zone? That's when we talk about a potential way and an avenue for Texas to lose this game. Like I need to see us converting inside the red zone. Turnovers and field goals. If Michigan turns Texas over and they can limit us inside the red zone, that's how they hang around, in my opinion. So those are the big parts of the game that I'll really be focusing on. And that's not to say that Quinn won't go out there and play a very clean football game. If he does that, my confidence level would raise from, I'd say, probably a 7.5 to strong 9. If I were to know, you tell me right now Quinn doesn't turn the ball over, I feel great. But if you add red zone stops in, coupled with multiple turnovers, maybe one that sets up Michigan for an easy score, that's a way I could see it getting real dicey for Texas.
Yeah, because Texas wasn't great in the red zone last year. Some of it not their fault, but
Right.
this year you lost your probably best back ceiling wise heading into the season in CJ Baxter. It doesn't feel like Texas really has like a big possession type guy at the receiver spot. I mean, Amari Niblack could turn into a potential threat in the red zone. But you're right, that could be something. It hinders them a little bit. If I told you Michigan were to win, again, not jinxing it, but if I was to told you Michigan won this football game, why would that be?
Those couple of those mentioned, or the reasons I referenced, obviously turning the ball. Michigan turns us over 3 times, in my opinion. That's when I start thinking, okay, we can lose this game if we were to do so. We turn the ball over 3+ times, and then let's say we have 5 red zone trips. They hold us to field goals on 3 of the 5, and that's where I would really pay a ton of attention. And then obviously, if Michigan wins, they're gonna have found a way to be effective on the ground, whether it is with Alex Orji, being a 2-way player or a dual threat rather, whether it's Donovan Edwards, and then the backup's name is slipping my mind. Looked great against Fresno. So
the
yeah.
Warren kid.
Yeah. I mean, or no, sorry, the backup behind Donovan. Man, he looked good in the fourth quarter. It's gonna drive me crazy.
Yeah, I know you're
He had
talking about.
two or three 10+
I
yard runs.
heard Klatt talking about him today.
Yeah. Guy looked good.
I got it right here. Khalil Mullins.
Okay. I was paying attention. I was like, hey, guy's running good. Obviously, the offensive line was doing a little bit better of a job there in the fourth quarter, moving around a tired Fresno defense, and they kind of it got bleak after Michigan went up 2 scores and the picks. I mean, yeah, they did move them around a little bit easier. But if Michigan were to win the game, I think it's because they turned us over several times. They won the battles in the red zone. They really limited Texas, and then they either found a score, not particularly from defense, but they got set up for an easy one by the defense. I think in what is expected to be somewhat of a low-scoring game, you're talking about, what is the spread down to? 42.5, 43?
Yeah,
somewhere in there. I think that taking care of the football is going to be key for Quinn, and realizing like, hey, it's going to be a great defense that we're up against. A very physical defense, a very smart defense, excellent defensive line, several NFL players. Will Johnson's a monster. So it's just, hey, we'll have our chances to score. Trust our defense to win the field position battle. A way that we get in trouble is losing the turnover battle. And so we can't do that there. Protect the football, obviously, with our running backs. But I'm curious, man, you talk about the power run game and maybe lack thereof. We don't really know about Texas yet. But when we get in the 20, the field shrinks. We don't have, maybe yet a proven big body target or a guy that red zone target. I'm hoping that, Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore can potentially be that guy along with Amari. But I'm really curious to see, what we look like inside the 20s against a really good Michigan defense.
All right, before we get to our picks, what's going to happen? Who we got? You going with the Horns? Going with the home team here, baby?
I trust Quinn Ewers. I trust Steve Sarkisian. I trust our defense. And I think Jeff Banks on special teams. Our special teams is going to be a plus for us in that game. Trust field position. Texas 30, Michigan 16, with Texas pulling away with a late score to cement the cover.
I got 28-17. That's what I got.
There you go, brother.
All right, here we go. Blake Ruffino, special guest last week. Now it's your turn. Goes to Texas football. We're gonna roll through these. I'm gonna say the game, say the lines. You tell me. Texas at Michigan. Texas minus 7.5.
30-16 Texas. So that's Texas minus 7.
All right, Ghost has got Texas. Chalk that one up. Arkansas at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State minus 7.5.
A really tough game to handicap here. I think it's Ollie Gordon versus Taylor Green. A lot of points on the board. I'm rolling the Pokes 38-30. So give me the 7.5.
Barely, just covering. I can see
barely.
Cal at Auburn. Auburn minus 13.5.
I'm thinking we see a big game out of Peyton Thorne. I really do. I think that Cal plays from behind a lot. I like Auburn to cover. I have that one 34-16.
I agree with you. I think Auburn, this is a game about Remember how ugly that game was last year in Berkeley?
Oh, that was really hard to watch. I think it was
right after the Bama-Texas game last year, wasn't it? It rolled into that.
Second week, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a really hard game to watch.
It rolled into it, and people barely stayed asleep. Hell, even Peyton Thorne I saw was on some show, and he was like, dude, that game was embarrassing. Man, somebody who wouldn't deal with it. All right, next one, interesting one. Is this Dave Randall's last year in Waco? But what reason why I say that? We got Baylor at Utah. Utah favored by 14.5. It always feels like if you're hiring the retread former Big 12 OC, they're bringing him in his first year because it's kind of your last year. It's tough to go hire a good OC. They got Jake Spavital. I kind of like Utah here to cover that.
Well, I mean, and for the reason, or the first thing that you asked was, is this David Aranda's last year? And for that being, a potential reality for that man, I have Baylor covering. I think that, with the dogfight last year that they gave Utah and Waco, Utah has a couple of big games coming up here in the next 3 weeks. I don't think they'll be pushing any envelope. They never do anyway. So just my personal reason why I have Utah winning by 10, 27-17.
All right, so me and you disagree on 2 so far. We're both with Texas. We're both with Auburn. I'm going to go Arkansas. I don't feel great about that one. I really don't.
I don't either.
You're right. I mean, you said it. It's a hard one to handicap because it's just
Absolutely.
like you can make a case, a script either way. Again, I like Utah probably a little more than you. Next one, South Carolina at Kentucky. Kentucky minus 10.
Man, I think that this game could get pretty gross. I don't see a way that South Carolina wins that game, but I do have them covering in what I expect to be a pretty nasty, low-scoring battle and a low-spread game with a big point spread on it. I do like dogs at times, but I have Kentucky winning 17-10.
Yeah, this screams backdoor cover. It just screams it.
Would I be surprised?
Kentucky kind of controlling this game and South Carolina scoring late and it just being over. That would not shock me at all.
Wouldn't be surprised to see a Kentucky cover. Absolutely. I mean, that game could be silly.
Colorado at Nebraska. Nebraska minus 7.
I'm rolling with the Huskers here. I like them to win, like them to cover. I think they're going to score a lot of points. I think last year a little embarrassing the way that they kind of let Colorado move the football up and down the field. So you'll see a very spirited effort. Obviously, you're playing at home in front of a ton of very passionate, loyal Nebraska fans. Give me Nebraska 34-23.
Yeah, I agree. I think Nebraska will cover that. Houston, at your favorite team in the world, Oklahoma. The Sooners are favored by 27.5. I had to put this one on here for you.
I love it, man. It's also tough for me to cap the Oklahoma right now because I don't love what I saw on the offensive side. I think Jackson, I mean, he's going to have to show that he can move the ball down the field vertically and connect. Offensive line's going to have to get better. They had an injury with Jalil Farouk. But at the same time, their defense acted like an offense in the game with Temple last week. And so I can't rule out them multiple turnovers again, setting up easy field position, easy tutties. So I have Oklahoma winning 40-14, just quite Houston covering by 1.5 points, I guess.
Houston's bad. It's just unfortunately for Willie. I mean, they took a beating by Barry Odom and the running Rebels of UNLV last week.
Bad. It looked so non-competitive.
It was non-competitive. So I'm just like, man, Oklahoma could probably struggle a little bit on offense again and probably cover this. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Oklahoma covers this. Tennessee, NC State in Charlotte. Tennessee favored by 10.
I'm going against the grain here. A lot of people are all over Tennessee. Obviously, there's a reason that line moved from 7.5 to 10. I think Dave Durham, the performance versus Western Carolina, rather, that's an outlier for me. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think defense has been their calling card. Now the front seven is going to be a little weaker than in years past. I have them putting up a spirited effort. Grayson McCall balling a little bit, but the Vols still winning the game. I have it 27-24 Vols.
I think it's a game Tennessee gets at from 42-14. You're right, though. I'm in the minority there. You're going the opposite. And then finally, last one goes Mississippi State at Arizona State, replacing the Pac-12 after dark. Arizona State currently favored by 5.5. This is kind of an unknown game to me a little bit, too.
I think a little bit of people are kind of overreacting to what Arizona State did to Wyoming, who was kind of expected to hang in that game. Just my opinion, but I like Jeff Lebby, Blake Shapen, what they have going right now. I know it's early and there's a lot that we don't know about everybody, but I think Mississippi State rolls in there and pulls off a win. I have them 33-30 over the Sun Devils.
Yeah, that game and the Arkansas-Oklahoma State game, like me, you thought, is one of the two games that I'm kind of like wouldn't shock me. It's like you said, people are probably. I mean, I took Wyoming plus 7.5 last week. I mean, it was over essentially from the get-go. But you're right, it wasn't Craig Bowl Wyoming anymore.
No, not at
it's just
all.
kind of a different Wyoming. I think people kind of think, and myself included, it's just hard to keep up with them out there. It's like, oh, Wyoming, they're a tough physical-ass team. They'll play. It's like kind of a different team now. Kind of a different team a little bit. But Ghost, before we get you out of here, recapping your picks. Texas at Michigan, Texas minus 7.5. You have Texas. Arkansas at Oklahoma State minus 7.5. You're taking the Pokes. Cal at Auburn minus 13.5. You're taking Auburn as well. Baylor at Utah minus 14.5. Baylor getting 14.5. Me and you disagree on that one. You have Baylor covering that. I have Utah. South Carolina, Kentucky, we're on the same page there. Kentucky minus 10, just kind of a weird line, though. Kentucky definitely wins the game, I think. So. But a weird line. Colorado at Nebraska, we agree on this one as well. Nebraska minus 7 covering. Houston at Oklahoma, we both agree on this one. Oklahoma favored by 27.5. Houston just an atrocious team, I think, this early in the Willie Fritz tenure. Tennessee and NC State, we disagree on this one. I got Tennessee covering the 10. I think it's a 42-14 type game. You said you like Tennessee to win, but the Pat cover. And then finally, Mississippi State is at Arizona State. Current line, Arizona State minus 5.5. You like Mississippi State. I like Mississippi State. So we disagreed on what? 1, 2, 3. Just 3 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 3. We just disagreed on 3. We'll keep up with the records as the weeks keep going. Last week, remember, as Are You Serious? Blake Ruffino came on to help us preview the USC LSU game. He was our special guest picker. Obviously, this week, it's our boy. It's our guy, Cord Samuels. You guys, again, on the main streets of Twitter, know him as the ghost of Texas football. Give him the follow at 40 Acre Vibes. Cord, Ghost, I appreciate you joining us, man. I'll keep you updated on the record. Hey, I'm with you. I hope the Horns get it done this week. I expect them to. I think the game could be a little closer than people think, but I think Texas pulls away in the 4th, though. But, brother, I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Dave Talks Ball, man. And look forward to bringing you on the show again at some point later in the season.
Hey, brother. It was a blessing. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon. Hokum, guys.
Later, brother.
Later, man.
Again, guys, our boy Cord Samuels over there, a.k.a. Ghost of Texas Football is how you would know him on social media. Again, go give him the follow at 40 Acre Vibes. One of the best Texas Longhorn follows out there. Again, obviously Texas and Oklahoma coming into the league. They've both been fantastic for us here at SEC Unfiltered Channel. I appreciate you, Longhorn fans, Sooner fans, Mars Jams too, already focusing in on the show. He's already bringing it up. I appreciate him doing it. He already said, great show. I appreciate you, brother. We appreciate the Sooners, Texas, the new kids on the block coming in to the league and making SEC Unfiltered their favorite place to get all things SEC. Again, guys, it's football, basketball, and baseball across the board. Obviously, we're going to be having content out the eyeballs here with it being football season. But the last segment of the day, guys, I'm not going to let you get out of here without leaving with some money in your pocket. Before we even make these picks, remember, guys, this show is brought to you by our guys over at MyBookie.ag. Last time I'm going to plug it, though, because we got to pay some bills. Use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer your first deposit. We're going into money-making weekend, guys. Go make an account with our guys over at BetOnline.ag and use these 10 picks that I'm about to give you. But let's go to it right now. Money-making weekend. We're just over 67 minutes in. We're not going to go as long on this one, but let's get to it. Mississippi State, Arizona State. Give me the over 59.5. I think there's a lot of points scored in here. I think Blake Shapen. I don't trust Mississippi State's defensive line. I think Arizona State's going to be able to get some points as well with Scattaboo, the running back, and the quarterback is well used in the run game. The Levitt kid transferred over from Michigan State. I like this game to go over. Give me Mississippi State, Arizona State, over 59.5. Next, South Carolina, Kentucky. We talked about this one. Tough. I don't like the 10. I don't like the line. I think that's a backdoor cover, screaming it all over. I could see Kentucky just kind of controlling the entire game. Late turnover. South Carolina sneaks one in. They win by 8 or 9. But give me the under 43. This could be a low-scoring game. Both teams, I mean, we heard all offseason Kentucky may implement some tempo. I went back and watched their game, 35 minutes of it against Southern Miss. They were snapping the ball like 11 seconds till the play off. So there doesn't look on the play clock. So there doesn't look like there's any tempo going to be in this new Bush Hampton offense unless they were saving it for South Carolina. But again, I think the under 43 here. Tennessee, I got it 7.5 early in the week, folks. I don't know what you've been doing all week. You must have been sleeping. It's up to 10 now. Tennessee minus 7.5 is my guarantee blood bank lock of the week. Lock it in. I know you can't get it now, and I even encourage you, take the 10. I think Tennessee big in this one, guys. 42-14. I like the Tennessee Vols to make a statement. Everybody knows about Nico Iamaleava. We know all about that. We know about Nico, but I don't think people understand how good he is. Go rewatch the game, the ball placement, the mesh point, the RPO. He has ability to make plays with his legs. I'm telling you, very good player, better than we're thinking, could legitimately be in the Heisman conversation this year and be a reason why Tennessee's in the playoffs. But I like the Vols minus 7.5. It's at 10 now. I would encourage you to take that as well. Auburn minus 13. I like this as well. This game ain't going to be as ugly as it was last year. Auburn's a better football team. I think Auburn's wide receivers could have a big day. I like Auburn on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Again, remember I told you earlier when we were talking about this game, Keldrick Falk, Jalen McLeod. If Cal, they could change the way Cal does the offense, getting it out quickly. I just think Auburn across the board. Give me Auburn minus 13. Tomorrow's game, Duke Northwestern. Give me the under in the Windy City of Chicago and Evanston. Under 37.5, a low point total, but under 37.5. Johnny Brewer, the new OC, a Rhett Lashley disciple, the new OC at Duke with Manny Diaz. I just think both these offenses are not very good. I love the under here at 37.5. A lot of these unders have been hitting in college football now. Iowa minus 3 in the old Cyhawk game. It feels like Iowa wins this game every year. I like them here. I don't really trust the Iowa State defense here. Offense has some question marks. I know it's at Iowa State, but give me Kirk Ferentz and the boys. Remember, hey, they're one of the top passing teams in the country right now after last week. I don't care if it was Illinois State and the Red Hawks, baby. Iowa lighten the scoreboard up. But in all seriousness, I don't think they're that good on offense. Maybe improve. But give me Iowa minus 3 this week. Nebraska, give me the first half line here. Minus 4. I think Nebraska comes out hot, takes control of the game. They're up by 7+ at half. But the line, I took it in me and Ghost of Texas Football's pick them 7.5. I took Nebraska, but Shadur Sanders and them kind of scream backdoor cover. Travis Hunter and them, they could go cut it, get on a run, go into their own 17-0 run and lose by 6. Give me the minus 4. Give me the Huskers minus 4 in the first half. Oregon minus 19. I think it's a big bounce back win against Boise State. That's another late one. I think Oregon comes out and plays really well. Look for Dylan Gabriel to have a big day. Utah minus 14.5 against Baylor. I think this is it for Dave Aranda. I think Utah, Kyle Whittingham, Cam Rising, them have a big showing out at home. Give me Utah 14.5. I'm pretty confident in that one. And I saw someone on TikTok mention App State's going to beat Clemson. We actually had Clemson App State. Give me the under 53.5. Still not sold on the Clemson Tiger offense. Not sold on the App State offense yet. I think Clemson's defense is pretty damn good. I don't think there's going to be a lot of scoring. Remember, App State really wants to come look decent in this game. They don't necessarily have to win it, but App State's in that contention for getting one of those group of 5 spots in the playoffs. They want to be the highest rated group of 5 team to get that one of those 12 spots in the playoffs. This is a big game for them. They're going to be fired up for this. I think this is a lower scoring game though. Give me the under in Clemson App State 53.5. And then my money line pick, I give it to you every week. I couldn't find a realistic double-digit dog like I did last week. We almost hit on that too. I took Hawaii. They were like 14.5 point underdogs to UCLA. Hawaii was up a lot in the second half. Ended up losing by 3. I would bet it again. I'd bet it again. But this one, give me Fran Brown and the boys. Give me the Syracuse Orange over Georgia Tech straight up at the Carrier Dome. Weird things happen at the Carrier Dome. Give me Syracuse over Georgia Tech. I feel decent about this. I usually, on a scale of 1 through 10, 10 being I would give you my first child. I'm that confident in this one for collateral. A 4, 5, maybe 4.5. I usually give you a little rating there on the money line. But give me Syracuse over Georgia Tech for my money line. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 10 games. We usually don't count the money line in my record. But heading in to week 2, after 2 weeks of betting, including week 0, we are 6-7 on the year. We are 6-7. We've won 6 out of our 13. Not terrible in the first 2 weeks. Again, Vegas even struggles the first couple of weeks, especially in today's college football with a lot of unknowns from a coaching standpoint. Obviously, the transfer portal, the roster's changing so much. Just wait till more film comes in. We get more data. It's going to improve. But again, 6-7, I'm not upset the first 2 weeks. But we're going to go 10-0. We're going to go 10-0, and I think even Syracuse has a chance of hitting the over Georgia Tech. But just reviewing the money-making picks, Mississippi State, Arizona State, over 59.5, high-scoring affair in Tempe late. South Carolina, Kentucky, under 43. Don't recommend taking the 10. That screams back door cover. Tennessee, minus 7.5. I got it early in the week. Blood bank guarantee right there. I would even take it at 10, folks. Tennessee, big. You heard it here first, 42-14. Auburn, minus 13. We're not repeating the ugly game. You couldn't even make Peyton Thorne watch again the 14-10 debacle last year in Berkeley. Auburn, minus 13 at home at Jordan-Hare. Line of scrimmage battle. I think they have it on both sides of it. Duke Northwestern, tomorrow, under 2 bad offenses, under 37.5, and give it to me. Iowa, the Cyhawk game against Iowa State. I like Iowa -3. Death taxes and Iowa beating Iowa State. Those are a few truths and lies. Nebraska -4 in the first half. I like Nebraska to get after Colorado early at Memorial Stadium, getting revenge from last year. Wouldn't shock me, though, if Colorado made a run late. That's why I don't like the 7.5. Give me Nebraska -4 first half. Oregon bounce back game against Boise State. Didn't look great this week. I'm sure Dan Lanning had some nice conversations with his Ducks. Give me -19, and that may not even be enough. Give me -19 against Boise. Utah, Kyle Whittingham and the boys may put the first nail in the coffin of Dave Aranda's final season in Waco for the Baylor Bears. Give me Utah -14.5 at home against the Baylor Bears. Clemson, App State under 53.5. Clemson defense is for real. I think it's still going to be Miami. Clemson in the ACC championship game. Still not sold on Cade Klubnik and the Garrett Riley offense. App State needs this one. Remember, they're in contention from the Sun Belt to try to get one of those G5 spots. They need to look good doing this at Clemson. Could really help them. Give me the other under, though. Low-scoring game, 53.5. And then money line, Fran Brown and the boys. It used to be Dino Babers covers. No longer the case. It's Fran Brown covers. Not only does he cover, he wins the game straight up. Syracuse over Georgia Tech at the Carrier Dome. So those are the money-making weekend picks. But, guys, we've gone 75 minutes, a little over more than I wanted to. But, guys, I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Dave Talks Ball. Remember, we move this show. It's every Monday night and Thursday night. No longer Wednesday nights. Every Monday and Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, coming at you here from the SEC Unfiltered channel. Remember, this show was sponsored by our guys over at MyBookie.ag. Go take the 10 picks, 11 picks I gave you, and use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer, folks. But we covered a lot, guys. We talked about the Big Five matchups. We talked Texas, Michigan. We talked Arkansas, Oklahoma State. We talked South Carolina, Kentucky, our lone conference matchup of the week. Tennessee, NC State. We talked Mississippi State, Arizona State, Auburn, Cal, the other games across the league. I think LSU's that team who bounces back, not necessarily because they're playing Nickel State, because they get the train back on the track, the undisciplined stuff, the penalties before they head to South Carolina next week for their conference opener. Is this a must-win for Sam Pittman this week in Stillwater? I'll tell you, it's a massive one. Can they go get it? I think they do. Don't feel confident in it, but I think they do. Our guy, Mike goes to Texas football, joined us as the special guest picker and also helped us preview and discuss that Texas-Michigan matchup. I like Texas in it. Should be a really fun matchup. That big noon kickoff over there in Ann Arbor. That'll be a massive game across the board. And the rest, that's really it, guys. That's really it. We covered that. I had a blast bringing this episode to you guys. We're going to be here with you 2 nights a week for the rest of the year. But, guys, I appreciate you joining us. Go like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Life comes at you, guys, especially in the fall. You got kids, wife, husband, whatever you may listen to. You can't always remember when I'm going live or when Cole or Chris post a video or anyone else from the SEC Unfiltered family. Hit that notification bell. It'll help you be notified whenever we post the content. Again, it's bleeding out the eyeballs here, guys. SEC content all the time. SEC 24/7, 365 coming at you, folks. I appreciate you joining us. You have a phenomenal Thursday night. Let's have a hell of a week 2 of college football.